Let's welcome in Bobby Marks, NBA front office insider for ESPN, former NBA front office exec, and he's had 20 years of NBA experience. Bobby, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. I'm just going to come out and fire off to you some stuff that the Warriors are dealing with. At the end of the year, Steph Curry's got one more year left at 62.
Sure.
He played 43 games last year, and he said, and obviously he's eligible for an extension. What does that look like? Is it, Steph, what do you want, or is there wiggle room?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, he's eligible for 2 more years. He can extend it in at the end of April. End of August. August 29th. So it's 2 years, 137 million. Typically, in an extension, you would really like to reward the player not only what he's going to do in the past, but what the future is going to be. So when he's 40, he's going to be making $71 million. Is he going to be playing at a $71 million player? I think that's to be determined, right? Like, as great as he is, and we see him when he plays as great as he is, I think where is his body from there? And that's a tough question, right? That's a tough question. That's a tough question to answer as far as do you negotiate? Is there wiggle room there? Do you write a blank check for him for how much he has done for the organization and everything like that. So that's the scenario that Mike and Joe Lacob were kind of staring at.
Bobby, I'm curious to get your opinion, your answer to this question. But what is the likelihood that the Warriors had a big fish like LeBron, Kawhi, Giannis this summer?
Well, LeBron is, if LeBron wants to go there on the veteran minimum, he could do that. Right? Like, that's if he wants to go that direction. I think, Giannis, it's a matter of, like, we kind of showed your cards, I guess, at the deadline as far as what you have to offer. As far as in a deal, I would think it would certainly would have to be Draymond if it's not Jimmy Butler, and Draymond would have to opt into his contract. And then it's a matter of getting the money to work as far as adding salaries. I think that's the biggest. For me, that's kind of one of the obstacles for Golden State, is basically cobbling together enough salary in a deal to send out in a trade. And certainly you can do some sign-in trades and stuff like that. And so that's for Giannis. I think, I don't think there's been any indication out of the Clippers. Both sides have said that they would like to run this back, and we'll see if he's also a guy that's extension eligible for another couple of years here. I think the Giannis part is that what is Giannis has a lot of say as far as what Giannis wants. He can just go somewhere and play out the year and then become a free agent next summer in 27 if he doesn't sign an extension. I think for a lot of teams that's a huge risk.
Bobby Marks joining us on 95.7 The Game, NBA front office insider for ESPN. Just real quick, jumping back to Curry, if he's eligible for 2 years for 137, in addition to the 62 he's making next year. And I understand the Warriors have some flexibility at the end of next year, obviously. But I guess my question would be, can you see a scenario where if Steph Curry goes, look, just give me 2 for 100 or 110?
Sure.
Can you see a tangible benefit to that down the line eventually?
Oh, most definitely.
Okay.
I mean, look at you have 3 players on their contract next year in 27, 28. Moody, Santos, and Will Richard. Your cap ledger is clean. So if you're taking 50 and not 65, I would think that would certainly help as far as if the ability to add in free agency, or the ability to potentially you acquire and trade. I think if you're Curry and you're meeting with them and he would say, well, what's the plan? Right? Like, what is the plan here? If I am going to take a discount and drop my salary, and give back, $30-40 million and $15 million per year or $20 million per year, who are we adding? What does the roster look like? What are going to be some of the options as far as how we build this moving forward?
Bobby, you're right. There is a draft coming up, and, some things can happen. They can add, the Warriors, that is. But if you were a rival executive in the West, Bobby, how much of a threat would you view the Dubs next season?
what I've seen in the playoffs, I think where San Antonio and Oklahoma City there are miles away from them. I mean, that's the reality of it. And I'll say that for the Lakers, and I'll say it for Denver, and I'll say it for a lot of the Houston. I just think that those teams are just going to get better. Oklahoma City's I know they got some financial stuff to figure out, but they've got 2 picks in the top 17. San Antonio's got a bunch of picks also. You've got Wemby, you've got the young players here. I think that's the hard part. There's that foundation in place here where you saw last night. Jalen Williams leaves the game early. Cason Wallace, Isaiah Joe, Jared McCain. Like the depth there is what is sustainable when you get into the playoffs, and that's the difference between good teams who get into the playoffs and then great ones who have the ability to kind of advance.
Bobby Marks joining us on 95.7 The Game, NBA front office insider for ESPN. Kind of similar to along the lines of the Curry question, and I get that you can't. One of the things about the NBA is we can't talk about specifics of an action without knowing the action that's going to come for sure. But if Draymond Green takes his $28 million salary next year and they rip it up and he gets, let's say, 2 for, let's just say 36. So they save 10 next year on Draymond. Can you look at their books and say that'll open up a window or open up an option they don't have right now?
Yeah, it does. Actually, it's good timing. I have actually an article coming out tomorrow, and it's kind of taking the top or the 20 free agents and saying, like, what would I pay them?
Right.
I think Draymond, for me, was like 2 for 39. If you rip that option up and start him at 19, somewhere around there. If you can take 8 off there, which would be nice, and then that probably opens up your non-tax mid-level exception, and it gives you the flexibility. For next year, you basically reward him for another, some guaranteed money in the future here. So I think that's only an option that you would want to, look at as far as where they are. I mean, right now they're $21 million below the first apron, and that doesn't include Porzingis. And yes, you can bring him back and still exceed that amount. But if you want to bring back Porzingis and then also add to your roster, whether it be a trade or a free agency, I think you basically want to lower your payroll a little bit here.
Bobby, Brandon Podziemski, I like the player. He's not perfect, but he's a lightning rod out here with the fan base, and he's playing. What does an extension look like for him?
Yeah, I would say non-max players are always kind of the trickiest and hardest to try to figure out there, just because the player is not. There's no deadline, right? There's not a team out there with cap space. You basically have the Monday before the regular season starts to get a deal done here, and I would be stunned if there's any movement on Brandon until probably September and October with him. So I think you're looking at what the market is, as far as guys who have extended in the past. Christian Braun signed for in the low 20s and everything, and so I don't think he's going to get up to that number here. But you also have to remember, listen, the non-tax mid-level exception, which used to be kind of like in the $8 $9 million range, that thing increases. So it's $15 million this year, 16, 17 next year. So I wouldn't rule out a contract that's in the $19 to $20 million range, just based on how this cap is growing.
Yeah. Hey, Bobby, let me ask you this: if you were starting an NBA franchise tomorrow, and I put the Warriors roster in front of you with their salaries, in the future, and let's take Steph Curry out of the equation. Bobby, you can pick one guy, any guy off this Warriors roster. Who do you want?
Is he healthy? Is Jimmy healthy?
No, not right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I mean, it's a tough question. It's a good question. It's a tough question here, and I think that shows you, whenever this ends, and I think that's why pick 11 is really important in what you do what you do in the offseason here. Like, what's the foundation, right? Like, what's the next level of who's coming up the pipeline when Curry and Green and Butler are no longer on this roster? That was always my biggest concern, and we had thought it was some of the guys that you had drafted before that are no longer on the roster and everything here. But yeah, I don't know. Moody, maybe, that's maybe Pods. Like, you're looking at it, so you're basically between Draymond, Moody, Horford, who's got a player option. Pods, Santos, Melton's got a player option, and Will Richard.
And is it fair to say that when you put Butler and Draymond into that equation at this point, you're kind of looking at their money and when it comes off, as opposed to their value on the court?
Yeah, I mean, I think a healthy Jimmy Butler, and as you guys saw, can really impact a team, and that's the biggest thing. When does that come? Is that January? Is it February? Is it earlier here? I think that could be a little bit of the wild card as far as where the Warriors season goes. But the problem is that you probably about 3 months before you probably get him back when the season starts.
Bobby, I was hoping the Warriors fared better in the lottery, but they didn't. And as you and my partner just mentioned, they got the 11th pick. Do they go for a ready-made player, or can they afford to draft a project with where they're at?
I think there's a lot of, it's interesting. The draft's kind of broken up into different phases, certainly the top four, and then there's the next phase of all guards, all freshman guards here. I don't know if one of them will be there, whether it be the Braden Burris and Kingston Flemings and Darius Acuff. I don't think they will be. But then you're looking at bigs, right? So you're looking at Yaxel Lendenberg and Ade Mara, the two from Michigan here. If that's the direction, those are kind of ready-made guys who have been in school 3 or 4 years in college and have proved they can kind of roll in. Right, Morez Johnson's another one. Kareem Lopez played in New Zealand last year and has been a professional player since he was 14 years old. So, those are kind of the guys that you potentially, Nate Ament maybe possibly that would be a good one, who's at Tennessee. He's a freshman. So I think you're kind of looking at probably more bigs when you're at 11 there. I think LeBaron Fion's another one who's been in college a couple of years that can come in and play right now. But yeah, I mean, I've gone the direction when I was with the Nets when we drafted a player that was in college for 4 years, and sometimes that doesn't mean anything.
Wow. I got you.
You could say that it doesn't mean anything because his maturity level was a lot different than a player that was 17, 18 years old. In a bad way, I would say that.
Hey, real quick, Bobby, before I let you go, do you think anybody picking in the top four is open to moving it?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think so. I think I think you could take any of those four players and put them in, probably not Cooper or Victor's draft, and you could have a debate as far as if they would go in that year, number one or number two. I think Peterson and Devonta are two number ones. That's how I look at it with those guys, and then Boozer and then Caleb Wilson, I think are really, really good. So I think it's hard for one of those teams to move out of the top four.
Yeah.
No, that's what I was going to ask him. Thank you, Bobby. I wanted to know who you would draft at one, but it seems like you had two answers.
Oh, I do. I know. I'm hedging my bets, right?
Well, it depends probably what type of team you have right now, too. But, hey, Bobby, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Love the information. That's Bobby Marks, front office insider for ESPN.